I'm not a landscaper or a manscaper.
I lied.
But the landscape after free agency week 1 has changed everything.
It's time.
And I'm sure you've seen at least 497 mock drafts this week already, but get ready for 498. Here we go. We got 4 rounds today. I'm charged up. I'm ready to go. I hope you are as well. Let's get right into it. We're going to go team by team. So let's start the mock draft with the Tennessee Titans. And we go Cam Ward with a Miami Hurricane. They go quarterback. At this point, the roster, the way it's looking after free agency or during still free agency going on, you don't have much right now. It's Will Levis, it's Brandon Allen. It opens the door to a guy like Cam Ward coming in here with his arm talent and overall playmaking, improvisational skills, all those things. Mike Borgonzi, get your quarterback, always a huge, huge thing. And then you go into day 2, you got Jalen Walker. And I double dipped on the edge position because at the same time, you look at, they brought in Draymond Jones, and yeah, you still have Arden Key under contract, but both of those guys are free agents after this season, and neither, I mean, they're not bad players, but I still feel like they need to add clear edge rushers into this room, and that's why I'm going Jalen Walker, who I thought was a steal at the top of the second round, and then Antoine Powell-Ryland, another guy that I think is a little underrated in general, really 2 athletic, bendy edge rushers that are going to give you a lot of twitch, a lot of athleticism, and hopefully more pass rush to develop in there for the long haul. And then with our other 4th round pick, Jalen Royals fell into our lap. I wanted to get another, maybe more of a possession style of receiver, somebody with some yak ability. I think Royals gives you certainly some yak ability into the room. He's got good size at 6'2", 205, solid athletic profile. Doesn't have the long speed, but he has got a short area burst. And I think he can be a really, really nice route runner for this team to go along with Van Jefferson and Calvin Ridley. To the Cleveland Browns here, and what I did for them, I started off with Travis Hunter, the best player in the draft, in my opinion. And I decided to pass on the quarterback, and I went with quarterback in the second round. I went with Will Howard from Ohio State. And I am a huge Will Howard fan. I think he's super underrated in this draft class, actually. I would even consider him in the first round. I really think he could end up being the best quarterback in this class, and it wouldn't shock me at all. He's got all the tools. I mean, he's got the size. He has enough arm talent. He can fit on all the windows. He's got one of the best moon balls in the draft class, if not the best moon ball in the draft class. And what I mean by that is the deep ball. And he's also got, moxie in the pocket, man. And he's not the most athletic guy, but you give him a little lane, he's out of there, right? So I think Will Howard's super underrated, and he keep him close to Ohio here. I mean, hey, why not Cleveland? Go get him. And he's now your guy. So hopefully he can develop. And Kenny Pickett, you have a little competition out there. It's something, right? It's something. Travis Hunter, though, I love it because Travis Hunter for this Browns team, they could use him in both sides of the football field. They need a little bit more cornerback help to go along with Denzel Ward. And they also need a lot more wide receiver to go along with Cedric Tillman and Jerry Jeudy. So it just makes so much sense with Travis Hunter. And then on later day two, you get Marcus Bowe and Terrence Ferguson. Bowe, good developmental guard. Yeah, Bentonio's coming back, which is huge. However, I mean, you got Zach Zinter. Both of those guys between Joel Bentonio and then also Wyatt Teller are free agents next season. So I'm trying to continue to develop some guards there on that interior. Terrence Ferguson, David Njoku going last year with his contract. Jordan Akins now out the door. Let's go ahead and bring in a backup tight end in Terrence Ferguson who can develop for a season and maybe end up taking that role down the line. Caleb Johnson to finish up the draft, running back, and it was a good value at this point. And I felt like, hey, on early day 3, we can still find a stud at the running back position possibly, or somebody that's good. And Johnson falls into our lap as the bell cow, or at least somebody to compete there in the running back room with Jerome Ford, should I say. Now, one area I guess you could look at this is safety is an area that this team could add some more competition. I'd like for them to go free agency and maybe add a veteran in there to bring in with Ronnie Hickman. But for right now, I'm going to go with this. And it certainly is an option to look at safety as well, because there's a couple areas they could look at. New York Football Giants. If we didn't pass on quarterback, I'm going Shedeur Sanders. And I know Shedeur seems to get a lot of hate out in the media and stuff like that. But I think on film, Shedeur Sanders is one of the most polished quarterbacks in this draft class. And he is really accurate. He's probably the most accurate quarterback in this draft class. Yeah, you worry about he doesn't have the greatest arm strength or the greatest accurate or the overall greatest athleticism. But he's really, really poised in the pocket. He steps and takes tough hits and able to deliver throws. I don't like the fact that he drops back so heavily in the pocket. Some of the sacks are on him. Overall, though, I'm taking a quarterback here. They have to get somebody, especially if Aaron Rodgers keeps holding out. I don't know what Aaron Rodgers, he's probably still in darkness figuring out what he wants to do right now. So we'll see how that situation figures out, and that will change what happens here. But Shedeur, for the time being, let's get a quarterback. Donovan Jackson, let's protect Shedeur Sanders or whatever quarterback is coming in here. Plus, Donovan Jackson could end up being the long-term right tackle for Jermaine Illuminor going in last year of his contract. My view on it, though, is you put Jackson at left guard, you move John Runyon over to right guard, you got Greg Van Roten over as your swing guard. TJ Sanders, we're going to keep it. Look, you see South Carolina picks right here. Hey, I was like, let's just get the whole defense out here. So that's what we did. We got TJ Sanders, Demetrius Knight Jr., and Kyle Kennard. Sanders on that defensive front. Yeah, they got some guys like Jeremiah Ledbetter, right? You got Elijah Chapman, you got Roy Robertson-Harris. So they've got some veterans in there, but they need some more youth still. And I still want to add to that room. TJ Sanders, a lot of upside, probably needs a year to develop. He's got a lot of pass rush upside there next to Sexy Dexy. And Demetrius Knight Jr., another area where it's like Micah McFadden's going into a contract year. Yeah, you got Darius Musa, and maybe Musa end up stepping into that role to go up Bobby Okereke. But Okereke is getting expensive, and he could be a contract that they get out of next season. He's a good football player. I'm just saying they could use a little bit more help there. So I decided I thought that was a really good value on him. Kyle Kennard, get some more depth off pass rush. I mean, they brought in Chauncey Golston, but still, they could use that fourth guy, and then Kyle Kennard was just too good not to pass up at that point. To the New England pitcher. I emphasize the new because this football team is pretty new. They already got some talented guys on this roster and free agency, but let's continue that in the draft. At number 4, it was so tough because there are no trades in this draft class. Or in this mock draft that I did, I just said, let's get the best player available. Abdul Carter's on the board at number 4 overall. I'm not passing up on him. We've got guys. We got Harold Landry in there, and that's going to be a big addition for this football team. But I figured their starters would be Harold Landry and Abdul Carter. And then what in rotation, you have Anthony Jennings, Kevlon Chason. Keon White would also be able to play on pass rushing downs, especially on the interior. Like, he has versatility. He can play a 3-tech all the way to 5 outside as a wide 9 rusher. So that's why I'm not super concerned about this. Your pure edges, your starter and pure edges could be Carter and Landry. So there it is what it is. There's a lot of options they could do as well. They could end up trading one of those guys. You get it all figured out. You take the best available player. I know tackle or receiver are 2 huge areas of need. And ultimately, yes, a trade down would also make a lot of sense. Like I talked about earlier, no trade downs. I'm not passing up on talent like Abdul Carter. Ariante Ursery, we did go and dress tackle and wide receiver on day 2, and also a center position in Jared Wilson. But Ursery, left tackle in here, yeah, you worry about a little bit about the foot speed. The size, though, the power, certainly something Josh McDaniel is going to be looking for at that left tackle position. Jack Besh from TCU, he's a no-nonsense, come in there. I mean, he's going to be a quality wide receiver. Is he going to be a true number 1 wide receiver? I mean, probably not. But at the same time, he certainly would be able to come in there and add some more element in there. Maybe make this more of a Green Bay Packers type of wide receiving core where you have a ton of solid number 2 wide receivers. And maybe eventually you can find a true number 1. For right now, it didn't work out in this mock draft, and that's kind of the way it goes. But Besh is a good player. Jared Wilson from Georgia, the really great athlete. And hey, they go back to Georgia, right? They found their center for so long in David Andrews. Unfortunately, he's now gone. I still like Cole Strange, and I think that he can be their starting center. And I think there's a good chance that he ends up being their starting center. Until I know more, though, I'm going to go ahead and draft somebody with Strange and the injury risk and things like that. Let's go and get Jared Wilson. And it's like Strange can also be a guard, and so can Wilson. I think Wilson is not just a center prospect. I mean, I like Wilson at center. I'd put Strange at guard if you can do something like that, because they have needs still in both areas, right? So you could rock next season with Wilson, Strange, and also Michael Onwenu. Like, that could be your interior offensive line. I just want to make sure we're improving this offensive line as much as we can. And on to our final pick. I went RJ Harvey from UCF. I just figured he was too good not to pass up at this point. I'm a huge RJ fan, and I think he's a guy that's going to be able to work in as a change of pace back early on. And then if they wanted to get cheaper next year, maybe Ramondre Stevenson, they move on. Antonio Gibson, if he keeps playing like he did, I would keep him for sure. However, I just still think they need to add some more depth into the running back room. It is an area that they need to improve upon, and RJ Harvey certainly could do that in the run game and in the pass game as well. Jacksonville fans, ping, 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 ping. We got some new players in here. We got a lot of draft picks, and oh man, Mason Graham, he's the best player available on the board here. I'm snagging him. I don't care. Oh, he's smaller. He's not super athletic. He's amazing. That's all I care about. He's on film. He's unbelievable. It's undeniable. I'm taking him here to be that 5th overall selection for the Jags. And just adding that dominant guy on the interior. Like, that's what I'm looking at. They got a lot of use, of course, Mason Smith and Tyler Lacey. We'll see about Jordan Jefferson, who played nice, especially a good run defender, shooting gaps. You got some veteran leadership with Devon Hamilton, but I want to add in another beast. It's going to be Mason Graham. Then we got a beast in the second round, Matthew Goldenfeld. It's probably not going to happen in the real draft. I'll just be honest with you. However, there's going to be a receiver that falls. I really believe it's one of these receivers, was it Emeka Egbuka, Luther Burden, whatever the case may be. One of these receivers, there's a good chance they end up falling. They can get one of these guys, or Jaden Higgins would be nice too. You name it. Go grab somebody here on day 2 to be another weapon in here. I'm not sold with Gabe Davis or even them bringing in Diami Brown. I would like to add more competition to go along with that sidekick role with Brian Thomas Jr. And then, and also I have to factor in Parker Washington. Maybe he ends up being a really good slot receiver. Then we go on to Jack, the Captain Sawyer. How is he on the board? He always keeps falling in my mock drafts. What am I doing? I'm disrespecting Captain Jack. I'm snagging him here for the Jags. Use more depths, and that's what we're doing here. Get that number 3 edge rusher to go along with Trayvon Walker and Josh Hines Allen. And also, hey, Jack Sawyer can play on the inside a little bit. He can play 3-tech and pass rushing downs. I have no doubt about that. Malachi Moore, one of the more underrated players in the safety room in this entire draft class. I mean, Malachi Moore, maybe he's not an elite athlete, but he's one of the highest instinctual guys. He's versatile, can play in the slot, can play up top. I think he could be a rangy free safety. I think he is so underrated, and I'm going to go ahead and snag him. You got Eric Murray. You got Darnell Savage. They need to add more competition in there, and I think Malachi Moore might end up being the best safety in the room out in a couple years. Jarquez Hunter, let's pair him back up with his former teammate, Tank Bigsby. And hey, Travis Etienne is a free agent going into this next offseason. So I want to make sure we add some more help into the running back room. And I was looking for somebody who can pass protect and also help in the receiving game, because Tank still needs to improve in those regards, in my opinion. But Hunter adds that ability. And then finally, Jonah Monheim from USC. I'm going to go ahead and see what we can do with some more interior offensive line depth. I mean, they're in good shape in terms of starters, but let's find a guy with versatility. He can play all over that offensive interior line for them. Bet you 100-1 that we improve this roster for the Vegas Raiders after this one, but Tetairoa, I don't bet. But Tetairoa McMillan, Arizona, wide receiver, easy selection for me. I mean, not easy selection, should I say that? Rewind that a little bit. Beep, 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 beep. But I think McMillan, Jeanty, get one of those playmakers. I don't hate the idea of either trading down and going with like a Will Johnson or a Jahdae Barron, because they could use some more secondary help. They could use some more defensive help. Like, they've got a lot of voids. So, you know what I'm saying? Like, there are multiple areas that this team could be looking at in the roster or in the draft. But for right now, I would say you go grab one of those top playmakers if you stick and pick at number 6. Jeanty, McMillan make too much sense for me. And then Xavier Watts in the second round. I want to go get that stud safety in this room who's going to be a beast back end, ball hawking machine. They lost Trayvon Merrick. Let's try to replace him. I think Watts can do that. And then Cam Skattebo. Oh, man, you talk about Pete Carroll type of guy. Skattebo fits that bill. If he doesn't get Jeanty with that 6th overall pick, Skattebo, I think, is going to be very, very high on his radar. Tough as nails. Keep him out west. Dude is a monster. Barrett Carter, final pick of the draft from Clemson. They need to add somebody else in the linebacking room. We're going to do that. They lost Robert Spillane. So Barrett Carter can be a good cover man next to Eldon Roberts. And also they've got Tommy Eichenberg. So a lot of options there, but I'm going to help improve some of that linebacking room for Pete Carroll. Give him a coverage player and Barrett Carter. On to the New York Jets. Jets, Jets. And we start off Armin Embu. Have you seen this one before? You probably have at this point. I love it too as a Jets fan. This would be my pick that I would do. I'd be cool with Tyler Warren too, and I could totally understand that. This is something that I could see them going after. But Armin Embu, right tackle, Olufoshanu, left tackle. I think you got yourself 2 bookend tackles for the future, 2 young tackles. Let's go, my dreams. The dreams are coming true out here, hopefully, for the New York Jets. And start to build a stone cold, mean bugging wall for that front 5. And then you got Colston Loveland, one of the bigger steals in the draft. He just fell a little bit. Sometimes it's hard finding tight ends and where to go. Who wants a tight end? And now that Denver's got Evan Ingram and stuff like that. Maybe the Chargers, probably the Chargers go after Loveland, but I went a different route. We'll see that in a little bit. But Loveland would be an amazing pick if he were to fall to the Jets' lap at the second round. It'd be a no-brainer scenario. I'd be cool with them even trading up a little bit to get Colston Loveland. They've been looking for a stud tight end for quite a minute. They go get him in Colston Loveland. I'm loving it. And then, Jordan Phillips is up next from Maryland, the Turpin. Get them another interior guy. They're trying to find some depth right now, but they need a long-term starter next to Quentin Williams. Jordan Phillips can be that right developmental man. Isaiah Bond, wide receiver. Isaiah Bond. At the 4th round, this was an easy selection for me. Let's go add some more speed in this wide receiving room, right? I want to go ahead and add a a deep threat in here, a Z, right? You got Garrett Wilson who can move everywhere, be their versatile X. You got yourself a big X or a big slot, right? Alan Lazard he kind of played a little bit everywhere for the Jets this past season. And he actually did play better, so I'm cool with them keeping him this next season. Plus, he's a decent blocker. He can block. He'd be a tough-nosed guy out there. I do want to add somebody else into the room. I would love an Isaiah Bond, Garrett Wilson, Alan Lazard connection. You got what Tyler Johnson is some more depth. Overall, still need to add some more playmaker. We'll see if Malachi Corley can come along. On to the Carolina Panthers. And we got Mike Green, the machine, from Marshall. And I'm a huge Marshall fan, and I'm a huge Mike Green fan as well. I know there's some tricklings of off the field stuff. I don't know, how tough stuff you take that personally. But Mike Green on field, what he brings to the table, more pass rush. Yes, they've addressed some of that here in free agency. At the end of the day, though, it's still a need. They don't have that guy, that dude. I will say that there's a good chance Pat Jones ends up stepping into a good time role, and that could be a really good contract when it's all said and done. However, I also liked him rushing on the interior quite a bit. I think he was really, really good for Brian Flores as a 5-tech, 4-eye rusher for them on the interior. So it's like Mike Green can be your true edge rusher. You got Jadeveon Clowney, DJ Woonham. They still need more pass rush. And they can't, Carolina, let's fix this pass rush situation. On to our second round selection. I went Xavier Restrepo, the Hurricane from Miami, bringing the swirls over here. And I figured, why not add another weapon in here? Because they still need to add some more help. I love Jalen Colker. I think Xavier Legette can have a sophomore breakout campaign. But once again, like Adam Thielen's getting a little bit older, still on roster, but now you go into it with Xavier Restrepo, Thielen, and also Colker and Legette. And then we go on to our third round selection, Billy Bowman Jr. from Oklahoma. They need another safety. You got Trayvon Merrick, but who's going to be that other guy? Plus, Bowman gives you a lot of versatility. Can play in the slot too. Can play all over the place. Bowman's want to be one of those guys that people oh, his size, he's not big enough, right? We aren't going to draft him. And he ends up turning to be like a Tyrann Mathieu type of player. That's who he reminds me of. He's a ball hawking, playmaking beast in the back end. And then we got Jacob Parrish, another undersized, small guy, right? Small guy. But he can at least he can come in there and compete with Chai Smith-Wade in the slot position. I want to add more competition into the cornerback room, and I think Parrish would be a great addition for them. And then finally, Seth McLaughlin. They got Brady Christensen back, which I really like. Christensen could earn a nice big contract after this season. He's kind of like on a one-year prove-it scenario, and he played well. I watched his film, and I thought he was super underrated for that Carolina Panthers offense. However, once again, they may have to look at the long term. Maybe he gets a big contract somewhere else after this season. Let's go and add more competition. Seth McLaughlin from Ohio State. If he wouldn't have torn, the ACL he torn? If he wouldn't have the ACL tear, I think he could have been a day 2 pick. He's got the power profile. He's as strong as an ox. Let's let him develop and get fully healthy. And maybe after this next season, he could be their long-term center. I don't know what it is with me today, but you're seeing all these teams. I'm drafting the same team players for each and every team. A lot of times teams do that in reality, but I didn't do it on purpose. It just kind of happened with this mock draft. And you're going to see it throughout this. It gets even worse. I'm going to be straight with you. But you go and get a couple of guys that are really close to home here with Will Campbell, offensive lineman, and he could play tackle or guard for them. And you can figure it out. You can move Talasi Fuaga back over to right tackle and then have Trevor Penning compete at guard, or you can put Campbell at guard. Multiple options. You figure out your best offensive line. This is something that they need to nip in the buttocks. And then you go with Jaden Higgins in the second round, Iowa State wide receiver. Get a big, tall speedster on the outside. They had a lot of injuries, too, with that wide receiving room. Now you go ahead and pair up Higgins with Shaheed and also Chris Olave. And then we go ahead and get Trey Amos. More competition. They did bring in Isaac Yadam, and he should help out. He can come in there and be a solid number 3, number 2 cornerback. I do want to add more competition. Amos at this point in the draft makes too much sense to get some more help there. And then we got Braden Swinson back from LSU here, going to be another power rusher for them off the edge. Really good with his hands. And he comes in that defense, gives them some more rotation, especially at this point with Cameron Jordan. I want to make sure we have a good rotation in there. And then Danny Studsman. I want to add a linebacker, get some more youth. And I love the fact, I will say this, Demario Davis just should have never let him go, but it is what it is. Davis has been such a beast. We need to still think about the future here, and I want to add in a linebacker. Maybe Jalen Ford can be the long-term answer. Who knows? No matter what, though, Studsman, too good of a value not to take at that point. I just noticed I had J.J. Pegues listed as a guard. You know what? He could probably play guard. Dude, that's why I was probably struggling. I'm probably going through that when I was making the graphics. I'm like, what position does he play again? I've seen him play running back. I've seen him play wide receiver, defensive line, edge. He can do it all. He's a really loose athlete. he could end up being someone like I don't know. He's a really interesting prospect. He really is. I think he's going to be a very good rotational player at minimum. I really think so. He just shoots gaps quickly and he's powerful at his size. I think he's going to be a really stout run defender. Maybe not like the most explosive guy. So I don't know if he's got like high end pass rush traits to him. I really do think he's going to be a quality rotational player. And they brought in Devon Gotchow, who's going to be a good run defender. So I just want to continue to bolster their defensive line. And then on the Chicago Bears, where it's the boulder, Ashton Jeanty. I know. You're probably saying to yourself, it's probably either Genty's the landing spots in mock drafts right now. It used to be the Cowboys all the time. Now it's either the Raiders or the Bears. And that's kind of what it is. But I love it. Ben Johnson, the boulder, and Ashton Jeanty, I'm taking it all day. They don't have a whole ton of positional needs anyway on this roster. Just go get the best players available. They're going to be impacts for this football team. And that's what I did on day 2, really. I just felt like Derek Harmon and Nick Scordon on the board. Harmon is a first-round guy. So is Scordon. I think Scordon could easily be a first-round guy, especially him losing weight and just kind of getting out of the Texas A&M program where just nobody can rush the passer, it seems like, because they just asked their players to basically stop the run and whatnot. So I think that Harmon would be a great selection. Even though you got Grady Jarrett on that contract, like at this point in his career, I don't know if he's a full-time starter at this point anyway. So get Derek Harmon to be that rotational guy with Gravon Dexter. That'll be a great rotation of 3. And then we also get Nick Scordon, be that pass rushing, that 4th pass rusher who can also play a little inside on pass rushing downs if they want him to. But you go into this next year with Sweat, with Deo Dangbo, and then also now you get Nick Scordon to go along with Austin Booker as your depth pieces. So that rotation of 4 I think would be really, really nice. And then we go on, finish it up with Andrew Makuba, the safety from Texas. Just adding more depth because you don't know with Jaquan Brisker and that injury, the concussions he's had, that is concerning. And I want to make sure they bolster the depth. They could also add some linebacker depth in here too, because going into next season, Tremaine Edmonds is the only linebacker under contract. But you could say the same thing at safety. Like there's nobody under contract at the safety position. So both the areas I think are future needs that I'm going to be looking at, continue to bolster at, and continue to improve. Onto the San Francisco 49ers. Let's get the candlesticks written up here because we're starting up with Mikael Williams. Man, I miss candlestick. But Georgia edge rusher, they go get a pass rusher on that defensive line. I certainly thought about interior defense line. I decided to take the approach, let's double dip the defense line later. So we get Mikael Williams with his upside and his tools, his traits. He develops in that number 2 pass rusher next to Nick Bosa, or opposite of Nick Bosa. And then on that interior, they're trying to rework that. They're trying to build, and I'm sure they're going to be looking to get younger there. We get Joshua Farmer and Darius Alexander, 2 beasts to add to that defensive line, adding a lot more pass rush and a lot more strength to that room. We got Charles Grant. We're going to add a developmental right tackle. Now, I did really think about adding a developmental center, and just kind of the way the board worked out, I did consider Jared Wilson at that pick at 75 because he was available. I think both would be really, really good options. I just decided to go with the tackle here, and I think that you could always see, the thing about it is McKivitz can move inside the guard too. Now, they're going to have to still probably try to figure something out on that interior, and Brendel can still start at the center position. I mean, it's interesting. However, they can figure those things out. I want to make sure we get at least 1 offensive lineman. Maybe we even should have gone after 2, so that would be my one knock on this mock draft is I should have probably gone after 2 offensive linemen. I double-dipped the interior defense line when you still need to see what goes on there. But Grant is a really good football player, and he has the elite tools. And then we go on to their next pick on day 3. We got Kobe Bryant, the Mamba, and then also Nick Martin, or the other Mamba, should I say. I mean, the legend Mamba, and then you got Kobe Bryant. Hopefully he can be, live up to that Mamba name. He certainly has the tenacity of that name, so I got to respect that. Kobe Bryant from Kansas adds another playmaker in the back end, somebody that can be that 4th corner for them. And just like I said, they add some more depth in here because they do need to do that. And then, because you got Trey Brown in there, who they stole from the Seattle Seahawks. You got your 2 guaranteed starters with Bernardo Green and DeMario Lenore. I want to make sure we add at least a little bit more help in there. And then finally finish up with Nick Martin. And I really am excited to see D. Winters as a full-time starter. And that's why I didn't go with linebacker earlier. And especially in this draft class, I think you can find some more linebacker depth in this 4th, 5th round. And it just makes a lot more sense to go at that point. Nick Martin, a really good athlete, kind of banged up this season. A lot of upside there with Nick Martin, despite the lower end size. They can work with that. Nick Martin could be an absolute steal for. On to the Cowboys here. We got Luther Burden the third. We're going to go at a playmaker in for Dak Prescott. A lot of options you could look at. I'm still higher on Burden than Golden. It is close, though. Burden is a good player, and so is Golden. Golden ended up falling in this draft. And that's why I say it can be so wild in some of these receivers and where they end up going. Burden adds some more yak ability with CeeDee Lamb. It's just a fun little dynamic duo, and hopefully Jonathan Mingo can be that outside weapon over there. Tyleik Williams in the 2nd round. They still need to add somebody else in there. Mozzie Smith, I want to make sure we're at least adding more in there. You got Solomon Thomas, good rotational pass rusher. Tyree Williams, though, can stop the run. Like, he's got that grown man strength, and that's what I want. And then Cameron Williams, speaking of grown man strength, Cameron Williams has some of that. And he's going to be a developmental right tackle for Terrence Steele. And that's what I figure. And maybe Guyton moves over to right tackle. Maybe they look at a developmental left tackle. All options on the table. They can even look on the interior some more. But at least they added in Robert Jones to help out and add some sort of competition on that front. So I decided to go with a tackle in this scenario. On to the Miami Dolphins. Fins up, baby. And we're going to start off with a Wolverine. Pieces over there to Will Johnson, cornerback, the Wolverine. Let's go ahead and improve that secondary. You pair him up with Jalen Ramsey, Kader Coho. That's what I need to do here. Let's get some more secondary up. And we did add a safety too, Lathan Ransom from Ohio State University. So we're adding a little division rivalry out there. Hopefully they can just make them better. They need safeties. They need them. You can make the argument safeties if we're going to need that cornerback. But with the uninsurance of Cam Smith at this point, I figure let's go Will Johnson. Jonas Savanaia, also a big need on their offensive line, so I can't pass up on that. Let's get a day one starter on that front, finish up that line to really build a wall for Tua. And then you got Ty Hamilton and Mitchell Evans in the 4th round. Hamilton from The Ohio State University, we go, and add some more interior use. And that's something they need to do, right? They need to add another playmaker in there on that defensive line, and Hamilton is a guy that can do that. And then finally, Mitchell Evans from Notre Dame. Good, solid pass catcher, but he's going to be a tough-nosed blocker as well, can go along, be that number 2 tight end with Jonnu Smith. And then, hey, long haul, he can maybe tend to go over that positioning and be their number 1 tight end. Just trying to add some more help in there. I am Indy, we go. And what is that from? I don't even know. That's probably like an Indianapolis 500 sort of thing. Like, it's probably like a me making fun of it. But I love the Indianapolis 500. I love the Indianapolis Colts. We got Tyler Warren. Are you shocked? Oh, my gosh. I've never seen that before in any mock draft. I'm throwing out I'm such a unique drafter out here, but Tate Ratledge, we don't even need to talk about the Tyler Warren pick. I mean, it's a dream. It's a dream pick right there. It's exactly what they get. If he's on the board, of course. I don't know if he'll make it, but Tate Ratledge in the 2nd round, fill right in for Will Fries. Hey, Matt Gonzalez ends up sticking in over right guard. It's definitely a possibility. He showed some nice ability to play right tackle. I mean, he was getting a lot of chip help because they play 2 tight ends as a lot, so they're getting chips out there. Overall, though, Ratledge comes in at right guard. You can keep Braden Smith at right tackle, Matt Gonzalez as your swing tackle. Carson Swessinger going to add some more help at that linebacker position, and he'll be a good 1-2 pairing to go along with Jair Franklin of the future. And then finally, we add an Indiana Hoosier in there. We got to add a Hoosier. And we're going to go get CJ West, a guy that's smaller, but man, is he physically, he's crappy, man. He just comes in there and plays his grit out every single game, and he makes his presence known on that IU front. And even against his best competition, I thought he played some of his best football in general. He can stop the run, and he's also quick enough to get back and get some pressure on the quarterback of the Atlanta Falcons. And I want to start off with Willie Lampkin, the North Carolina center. 5'10", 270 pounds. You're like, what?
Give you a lift?
But Willie Lampkin is a fun prospect. I don't think he's going to actually go this high in the draft. But wherever he goes, I cannot wait to see. Strictly with his film, he is so good. His film is amazing. And he looked good at the Senior Bowl as well. He did get dominated a little bit at times here and there by bigger, stronger guys, and that's to be expected. However, you got 2 potential studs, right? I mean, you got 1 stud next to him in Chris Lindstrom, and I think Matthew Bergeron can end up being a really good player. So you got 2 solid guards next to you. You get yourself Willie Lampkin, and going from Drew Dahlman, like, hey, I think if nothing else, it's a 1-to-1 sort of thing. They had problems in pass protection. Willie Lampkin might have some issues there. He's got extremely good leverage and extremely good athleticism. But of course, for 270, you hope he is. But let's go back to the earlier picks. James Pierce Jr. and Kevin Winston Jr., the 2 juniors. We get an edge rusher, self-explanatory. They still need another pass rusher. We're going to go do that. And then Kevin Winston Jr., they need a safety to pair up with Jesse Bates. Let's go get that opposite pairing. I love that combination. Jesse Bates is your free roaming safety. Kevin Winston Jr. is kind of like a guy who can play in the box, extremely good tackler. It's a 1-2 punch made chef's kiss ready to go. Caw, we got the Arizona Cardinals now. I don't think that's a bird call, but it's something like that. We're going to be calling the Arizona Cardinals up here with this next pick. We're going to start off with Jahad Campbell, linebacker from Alabama. Honestly, I don't know where to go with this Cardinals team. Maybe they go wide receiver. Maybe they go more passers on that defensive line. Like, they're right now, with what they've done in free agency, they've added in a lot of guys. So it's like I'm trying to figure this all out. Like, some of these guys, for the future, Bilal Nichols And Justin Jones maybe not be on the roster next year, so like I still see them going after interior. But you got Dalvin Tomlinson, you got Darius Robinson, so it's like there's a lot of back and forth. You got Josh Sweat, maybe they could still use somebody else. You know what I'm saying? I'm scrambling my mind. I'm just like, you know what? Let's grab a linebacker. Even though they got Akeem Davis-Gaither, a 2-year deal, it can be a 1-year out scenario. It's only $5 million, and then you move on. So that can be an option too. So that's why I still wanted to improve the linebacking room. Mack Wilson is still under contract, but he also plays a hybrid role for them. He plays on the line. So, hey, Campbell can also do that too. And Campbell has so much upside. I couldn't pass up on it. That was a really good play. I like him a lot. So that's where we're going. You know, let me know on this one. I'm struggling a little bit. I'm not going to lie. This was one of the hardest ones to draft for. But Jalen Milroe in the second round. Let's add some more speed at the wide receiver position. And then we got Jared Ivey and Dylan Fairchild to finish up the draft. Ivey, I figured in this case scenario, let's go ahead and add a little bit more hybrid defensive lineman because I couldn't quite figure out what to do. He can play a little interior in the outside. I'm being honest. What it is. And then Dylan Fairchild is a more guard, center, depth for them. I like Fairchild a lot, and I think he's a really good pass protector. Yeah, he can get a little stronger. He doesn't have tremendous, strength at this moment, but he can get stronger, and that's something in a year or two he can end up developing into a starter for them. The Bengals, and they just re-signed Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Let's go. And they needed to do that. They really did. But now we need to get cheaper in certain critical areas. And that's what I'm going to do right here. Hone me in. We got this. Josh Simmons. He'll play guard early on in his career. Let him get fully healthy too. Stick him in there. And then long-term, Orlando Brown next season, you may have to move on, right? And you may have to because you can get out of his contract and save a lot of money. And that allows you to pay your other guys and maybe keep Trey Hendrickson and et cetera, et cetera. And that's why I didn't go pass rusher early in this too because maybe they get able to pay him. And then Siobhan Revel in the second round, East Carolina cornerback. I don't know whether safety or corner. This is another one where it could be a little bit challenging and depends on what Al Golden wants to do and where he wants to improve. And Daxton Hill can play a multitude of positions. So it's going to really come down to what he sees in this new philosophy, how he wants to approach this defense. I just went with the best available player. Like Xavier Watts could be a really good player if he's on the board here. But Revel on the board, that's an easy selection for me. And then we go Princely Umamiel, the edge rusher from Ole Miss. Get some more pass rushing depth because that's still something they need, right? I mean, you got Joseph Asai back in some depth, and hopefully Miles Murphy can step up into that starting role. I mean, if Henderson ends up leaving or if they trade him, then that's going to change everything. But for right now, Umamiel can be your fourth edge rusher. Tez Johnson, just add another weapon, right? And I don't know if Jermaine Burton's ever going to be that number 3, number 4 guy. I think, Yoshi Bosch may end up being the number 3 going into next season and going forward. But Tez Johnson at least can be that role, number 4 guy with his size profile. It is something where it may not be a full-time player, but maybe you can get a Tank Dell-ish type of player. The Seattle Seahawks, they got a lot of draft picks, man. This is so much. Seattle's such a fun mock draft because there's so many different options that they can go after. I started off with the guard because offensive line is their number 1 need. They got to improve it. They have to. Tyler Booker going to be a big, strong monster on that front. His film is fantastic. Oh, my gosh. And then Azarius Thomas from Florida State. Let's add the number 2 cornerback. Tariq Woolen going to a contract year. Azarius Thomas. And I know you may be saying, oh, not another corner who can't tackle. well, maybe Thomas can develop a little more in that. But he's a great cover man, just like Tariq Woolen can be. And then you got Trey Harris, Ole Miss wide receiver. Let's add another big physical outside weapon. We lost DK Metcalf. You had Cooper Kupp in here, of course, with Jackson Smith and Jigba. Now we added that big target on the outside in the vertical presence. And then we got Mason Taylor. I got to push myself up. I'm falling in the chair a little. I was like sinking a bit. And then Mason Taylor from LSU, Baton Rouge. Let's get a tight end to develop. And the way I look at this, I'm not saying we give up on A.J. Barner because I thought he showed some flashes, but Noah Fant going into a contract here, and maybe they get a little cheaper. You got Mason Taylor in a good tight end class. They got a lot of draft picks. The value at this pick was too good not to take Mason Taylor. I think he goes earlier than this in the actual draft, but Taylor and Barner, what a 1-2 punch. And then on to our next pick, we got Chris Paul Jr. from Ole Miss, the linebacker, going to be a good coverage player for them. And just add in another, I mean, they got Tyrese Knight. I like Knight. I thought he was really, really good this season for them. And he brought Ernest Jones back. But they could use some more depth, and they could use more of a coverage guy, weak side dude. I think Chris Paul can certainly do that. And then finishing up with a my guy, right? You got to throw in a my guy, especially at the end of drafts. Luke Newman is a my guy. I think he's way better than anybody gets credit for out there. He's strong. He has enough lateral agility, especially as a guard. And he can even be a developmental center, give more competition to Ola Watimi there. Overall, though, I wanted to double dip this offensive line. I think Newman's a guy that you need to keep an eye out on. Really do like him going back to the Holy Cross film, to the Michigan State film. Really, really good. On the Bucks, Tampa Bay, we go Nicky Manwari, the safety. Whoa, this is like you pair him up with Antoine Winfield and Mo. Boom! Woo! I'm exploding right now, my brain. I think that he is exactly what Todd Bowles could be looking for in that defense. A guy that is another versatile chess piece that can play in a multitude of roles. Like you've seen Todd Bowles do this throughout his time with these defensive chess pieces. Go after these guys with elite athleticism and size. Eman Wari is a playmaker. And then we got JT2 Amolau, a guy that can play a little inside out, give you more depth with Logan Hall if you want a guy that can rush on the inside too, and can also be another pass rusher on the edge. Darian Porter, hey, we continue the secondary. I'm going to add some more depth with Darian Porter. Hey, Jamel Dean, a little injury prone. I want to make sure we add more depth in the outside. And then on to their final pick. Hey, we kept it all defense out here. Smile, geez. But we got Smile Monda Jr. from Georgia. Adding a developmental linebacker, at least somebody that can compete with Savache Dennis. Now, they did bring in Anthony Walker as a good veteran, and I think that you go into next season with Avonte David and Anthony Walker as your starters, but Walker has had some injury things, so I think it makes sense to continue to invest in that for the future. They got to do it, right? And Ismail Mon has a lot of upside, so I want to make sure we continue to develop those guys. And then going on to the Denver Broncos, I'm going wide receiver. Emeka Egbuka, huge fan of Emeka Egbuka. He's just a no-nonsense, going to be a very good wide receiver. Whoever drafts him, you're getting yourself a stud. And I figured with their wide receiving room, you've got a lot of really good players, but Cortland Sutton going to last year of his contract. Let's at least add a little bit more of maybe more of a true number one. Now, I don't know if Emeka Egbuka is going to be a top-end guy, but I do think he has Amon-Ra St. Brown vibes to his game and certainly could be a 1,000-yard wide receiver year in, year out. And that, to me, makes a lot of sense. Pair him up with Bo Nix. And I think he fits in perfectly with what Bo Nix does best, short to intermediate range. And then we go on to Omarion Hampton, North Carolina running back. And this, to me, is either defensive interior or running back. Like, these next two picks, that's kind of what I'm looking at. And you look at the value, like, I could totally see them going after a defensive interior player in the second round, then going after running back in the third round. Maybe the value makes more sense. But with Omarion Hampton on the board here, I just figured let's go after it. I know you're saying, oh, another North Carolina running back. I do think Hampton is certainly worth that pick. And then Jordan Burch can be that developmental Zach Allen if they don't pay Zach Allen after this next season, because he could be expensive. And plus, John Franklin Meyer is going to a contract year. I want to make sure we bolster that interior a little bit, and I think Burch can play that, at least develop into that. He has the frame to do so. And then you got Chase Lent from UConn, the right tackle, going to be a developmental guy, really good athlete, just is going to be more of a developmental guy. Doesn't quite have the play strength right now. Mike McGlinchey's getting a little bit older, so I want to make sure we're investing in the position for the long haul. They might have to get a little cheaper somewhere on their offensive line too, whether it's guard or at the tackle position. The Pittsburgh Steelers, we're going Walter Nolan, interior defensive lineman from Ole Miss. Let's continue to add to those trenches, baby, because that's what those Pittsburgh Steelers do, and they build that mean front up there and go ahead, get Walter Nolan with his upside, his athleticism. You put him on with Keanu Benton and also Cameron Hayward. That's a great duo. Even though you lose Larry Ogunjobi, I think Nolan would be a great add to that front. And then Jalen Milroe, the Alabama quarterback. I know it's a little controversial wherever the heck Milroe goes, but you see Lamar Jackson terrorize this division. You see him terrorize it twice a year. Want to add a clone in there. And yes, his accuracy, his decision-making is rough, and he does not have as good a film as Lamar Jackson coming out. He's not as good of an athlete either as Lamar has, in my opinion, but he is a very good athlete, and he certainly has the arm talent to develop. I actually think his arm talent is better than Lamar Jackson's. And then Denzel Burke, Ohio State cornerback. Let's add a developmental guy. You did bring in Darius Slay, but it's, he's getting older at this point, and I want to make sure we add some more developmental help. On to the Lightning Bolts, the Chargers. We get Kenneth Grant and the first round. Let's add a Wolverine. We added a couple of Wolverines here with Hosea Stewart. Just continue to bolster those defense line. We lost Poona Ford, and while Poona Ford a little bit different player than Kenneth Grant, right? Poona is very much a strong point of attack, and shoot gaps, get in there in the backfield quick. Grant can still do a lot of that, right? Grant is extremely athletic for his size and extremely imposing with that size to a 331. So you're adding in familiarity with Jim Harbaugh, knows Kenneth Grant as good as anybody onto that defensive line, building that defensive interior up some more. And then Elijah Arroyo, the Miami Hurricane, going to be that tight end for them with Will Dissly. And he's going to be that more receiving tight end, right? He's got the elite athleticism you look for and certainly can be a top-end talent. He has all the tools to be a top-5 tight end in the NFL. Hosea Stewart, we talked about, will be another good rotational pass rusher to go along in that front with Bud Dupree, and that'll be the early rotation. Stewart and Bud Dupree will be the rotation with Tuitu Pelotu and Khalil Mack as your starters. Damian Martinez, we're just kind of going back and forth. The all M's here schools, but 2 Miami players, 2 Wolverines. Damian Martinez, really powerful running back, and he's got underrated speed as well. He's going to be a good change of pace back with Najee Harris. Moving on to the Packers, and we start off with an elite talent edge rusher, Shemar Stewart from Texas A&M. This is where the Packers and Brian Gutekunst, they love to draft these guys with extremely high upside, young prospects as well, and he has the talent, the tools to succeed with the right development. They need more pass rush, just clearly they need more pass rush in that room, so we're taking a chance. This is where I think his floor hits, really. Eligay Manor, another guy with some elite tools, but the production definitely took a dip this year, and you do worry a little bit about consistent separation. I think his footwork is pretty good, though, and I do think he can separate. And as another guy with Christian Watson, the injury, it makes sense to go at a big vertical threat into the room. Quincy Riley from Louisville, hey, if they end up trading Jair Alexander at some point, well, we go get another Louisville corner, and he's really sticky in coverage as well. And then finally, Ty Robinson from Nebraska, big, strong, got better athleticism than you think. He does come out of the stance a little high. That's going to be a problem. And a quick offensive lineman can get the best of him there, but definitely has a lot of upside on that defensive line. Now, he's a little bit of an older prospect, too. Overall, though, they need to continue to bolster that defense line going next year. Kenny Clark getting expensive. So, yeah, let's continue to add to that defensive line. It's time for one of my favorite chants. Score, score, score. I never get tired of that, man. But here we are with their 2 picks. Jahdae Barron, the Hook'em Horns, Texas cornerback, the versatile man, can play a little bit everywhere for them in that backfield. But here's the only knock that I would say on this pick. It was BPA. I would love a Siobhan Revel, too, a guy with a little more size in the cornerback room, because you do have, Isaiah Rodgers, you got Byron Murphy back, and those guys are sub 6 foot. So that would be my knock on this one if I had to critique this one pick. But it is best available, in my opinion, and I think Jahdae Barron, really good football player, extremely talented, adding another key cornerstone, marquee player in the room. You got guys in there. You got Mekhi Blockman, maybe a Caleb Evans. There's some dudes maybe you can develop in there. We'll see how Mekhi Blockman comes back from that injury. So that is something to consider. How confident are they in that? Barron could even also play safety for them in the long haul, even though I think they're also confident in Theo Jackson in one of those positionings. Jalen Rivers from Miami, super powerful, super strong. He's big. He's got a monster wingspan. Comes into that interior of the offense line, at least competes with Blake Brendel, and you got to add some sort of competition in there. That's my view on this. So let's try to finish that offensive line. You get Will Fries and Ryan Kelly in there. More than likely, Garrett Bradbury is going to be traded here very, very soon. So let's get that left guard of the future. Let's go on to Houston. Houston, we don't have a problem because we got ourselves a left tackle in Josh Connolly Jr., Oregon. Left tackle. I'm a huge Josh Connolly Jr. fan. I think he is going to be a guy that is in the NFL for a very, very long time. His natural athleticism, his movement skills as a pass protector. Yeah, he may not have the grit that possibly DeMeco Ryans is looking for in the room. That could be the one knock on him. But I actually think his run blocking is very good on the move, especially. So you get yourself a very athletic, pass-protecting left tackle at bare minimum who does have upside as a run blocker too. And then you got Travion Henderson, the running back from Ohio State. Get themselves some more speed in that running back. I just felt like he was a BPA at this point. You got Daryl Gumbawali back as some depth, a great special teamer, but they do need a little more speed in that running back room and more rotation. Joe Mixon at this point in his career, good player, great player. However, I want to add that 1-2 lightning punch there. And then Aeneas Peebles from Virginia Tech, great interior pass rusher that you can develop. He needs a little bit more play strength, a little more size that can develop in time with some of their veterans that they have. And then finally, Jamari Caldwell, he's going to be that grown man on that defensive line who's big, powerful, and stout, should I say. Not huge, but he's powerful and stout as a run defender. I also figured it would be a good contrast between the two players. It's not that Jamari Caldwell can't get out in the backfield either, but with their defensive line right now, they don't have a whole ton of guys that are contract going into next year. What do you got? Tim Settle right now, Mario Edwards. So, yeah, they need to add some sort of more help into that front. It really made Tommy Togi, I think I mentioned him too. But yeah, you got some guys in there. They need to add some more help going into the line, to the long haul of this. Sheldon Rankins is on a 1-year deal too. On to the Rams here. And we start off with Ben Morrison, one of my draft crushes here. He's just a guy that if it weren't for the injury thing, I think he'd be a top 10 pick, maybe even a top 5 pick. He has that level of talent. You get him here at 26. You figure out that cornerback room once and for all. You got Kobe Durant. You're going to keep Dorius Williams for another season. It's Ben Morrison. Give him a full year if you need to develop an injury risk or whatever. Keep Quentin Lake in the slot. Like, gives you options. Ben Morrison, too good. I cannot pass up on him. He is an unbelievable player at a huge discount with the injury, the hip injury, and also shoulder. I believe he had shoulder surgery too. Ozzy Trebillo in the 3rd round. I thought this was tremendous value to get a right tackle to develop, and why not, right? He's got really good size, and he has all the tools and solid athleticism as well to be a really good right tackle of the long haul for them by Rob Havenstein going to last year of his contract. You get Jeffrey Besa here in the next 3rd round pick from Oregon, who at this point, their linebacking room, I don't know what exactly they're going to do. They don't seem to value it a whole ton. Maybe they go at it in the 1st round of this draft. Maybe this is the year. Who knows? And Jahad Campbell's there. That could definitely be an option for them. But with this one, I went with Jeffrey Besa here, and get yourself somebody who has some coverage upside there, was really good at the Senior Bowl in the offseason progress. I think he could be a good player next to Omar Smites in this linebacking room. They got to add some sort of help in here. And then finally, Harold Fanning Jr. I can't pass up on him at this point, right? And you got to figure on that their tight end room, Kobe Parkinson, maybe they get out his contract this next season. Tyler Higbee, good player, just dealt with a lot of injuries. So I want to make sure we're bolstering this tight end room. And maybe Davis Allen can end up being a good player at some point, but it took a bit of a step back, in my opinion, this season. Injuries, those are big things too. But Harold Fanning Jr., I'm taking him. I'm rolling with it. Let Sean McVay use this guy and get creative with Harold Fanning Jr. That would be an interesting selection right there. And at 127, I can't pass him up. Moving on to the Baltimore Ravens. I'm going offensive line, Gray Zabel. I will say that they could use a versatile offensive lineman out there. They lost Patrick McCarry, so Gray Zabel, perfect addition for that, right? And it's maybe not, it may not be a 1st round. It depends on how they feel about Andrew Voorhees. That's something that behind the scenes, I know he was the starter going into the season, and there's a really good chance going to year number 3 that they feel very good about that. And they had to make a choice too between Ronnie Stanley and Patrick McCarry. They ultimately went with that left tackle position, which I understand. However, offensive line is still a need, like, period. It may not be a 1st round need. Maybe they go Malachi Starks in this, depending on how they feel, what they want to do. If they want Kyle Hamilton to move back into more that role where he goes in the slot in the box, more or less, so that if you want to keep him at safety, there's a lot of options for them. But for right now, I'm going to go Gray Zabel, and I think he would be a great offensive lineman that could start right at left guard for them, or just be a great 6th offensive lineman. That is always important. You're only as good as your 6th offensive lineman, but then you have competition between him and Andrew Voorhees. You got Shemar Turner on at Texas A&M. I'm mean. He runs maybe a little too mean as a pass rusher sometimes. Dude plays on fire, and he's going to add some more pass rush. Exactly what they need. Really good athlete. And their pass rush, I feel like, I know the production was good, but for me, watching the games, I just feel like their pass rush wasn't as good as their production would say, and they need to continue to bolster that. Now, Mabuki was... Manabuki was, I feel like, double teamed so much, and I think he was like the 3rd highest in terms of double teams on an interior defensive line. So adding somebody else to go along that pass rush is so important. So I want to improve there on that front. And then we get some more coverage players in the secondary. One with Noah Williams from California, solid athlete, good size. Adds another player with Nate Wiggins and Marlon Humphrey into that room, which is very thin. Jalen Armour Davis, the only other guy really in that. And you can include Darius Washington. He can play in the slot too. And then Caleb Ransaw, who is at Tulane. He played in the slot, but I think he can move into safety. He's a really good tackler, and he tested way better than I thought he was going to test. So I think he'd be a really nice addition for them and give them more players in the back end, and that allows Darius Washington maybe play in the slot, or Kyle Hamilton to do what he wants to do, playing that roaming role and in the box and in the slot. And then last, this was a fun pick. All right, this is one where I'm just like, you know what? Let's have a little fun. We had Derrick Henry. Let's go add another Derrick Henry. Let's go get Ollie Gordon. And remember, Derrick Henry is going to last year of his contract. I think there's a good chance that he gets extended. But Ollie Gordon has some similar traits to his game. Maybe Derrick says, hey, look, use your stiff arm. Use a little bit more as he continues to polish up his pass protection and his receiving game. He has the skills, though, there to do so. And I really think he could be a great number 3 back behind Justice Hill for this team to continue to bolster that depth. It's time for the roar in the dome, and it begins with Donovan Ezeiruaku, the edge rusher for Boston College. I think Ezeiruaku is extremely underrated in this draft class in general. Like, the guy, he's gotten some love and everything like that, but the dude is one of the twitchiest I think he is the twitchiest pass rusher in this draft class. You talk about bend, you talk about flexibility. I think Ezeiruaku has the most out of anybody, and he is so dangerous with the inside counter moves and the spin moves and stuff like that. Maybe he can continue to work on more of a field spin move rather than a force spin move. Overall, though, he is going to add an electric juice into the room opposite of Aiden Hutchinson, Josh Pascal, and I think it just makes sense to continue to bolster this pass rush up some more. and especially on cheap deals as well. And then we go into Wyatt Millen from West Virginia. He is a guy that I just feel like he screams a Detroit Lion and what they're looking for with his run blocking mentality. He's a butt kicker. That's really what he is. He is an extreme gap butt kicking machine, and that's exactly what Detroit wants to do and wants to bring to their offensive line. He can bring more competition in there with Christian Mahogany as your future guard duo. So Millen and also Mahogany. Glasgow can be your your swing man. Like that would be a dream for me as Mahogany right guard, Millen at left guard, and then Glasgow as your backup center guard. And then we go on to Savion Williams and Jack Kaiser. Williams is a developmental wide receiver 4 right now, but he could be their long-term number 3. You got Tim Patrick who's back, but you do need to continue to invest and somebody who adds some more size and athleticism into the room. Patrick's a good player, but Williams definitely has the upside there to be a great developmental piece, to be the long-term number 3 in that room with J-Mo and Amon-Ra, the winged dragon of Ra. Finishing up the draft, Jack Kaiser from Notre Dame, going to be a good special teamer early on, and then can end up being this team's number 2 linebacker with Jack Campbell. And that's the way I'm looking at it. Alex Anzalone going to a contract year. Maybe he gets extended. I mean, Malcolm Rodriguez probably going to get extended. You got Derek Barnes back, and he plays a versatile role, right? He plays a little bit on the line as a pass rusher, run defender. He's really good at that role, that Sam linebacker role. They need a guy next to Jack. Let's go get Jack and Jack. That'd be a good movie as well. Commanders, we're up here, and on to number 29. They get Landon Jackson, one of the most athletic, freaky edge rushers here in this draft class. Put up a 4.6 at 6'6", 264 pounds, a 40-inch vertical. The guy's a freakazoid, right? And it shows up on film. He's more explosive than you think he is. He's also a better athlete in general than you think he is. Now, he's not the bendy guy, right? Don't expect him to pull Von Miller and those type of guys. Like, he's not Micah Parsons, totally different player. But they certainly need more edge talent in this room. They're very thin. I believe they brought Cleveland Farrell back. No matter what, though, continue to bolster this pass rush, get him to pair along with Dorrance Armstrong. It's a clear need for this football team. And I just think he's got so much upside. And I could see him being one of their better edge prospects in this draft class. He's got one of those guys that I've fallen in love with in this process as a person, as a player. I just think he's gonna hit. And then you got Emory Jones Jr. We got a couple of juniors. Jason Marshall Jr. from Florida. Emory Jones could play guard or play tackle for this football team. And this allows you to, because the situation where Brandon Coleman right now, I just don't know. I don't know if they want him to play right tackle or if they're going to move him to left guard. And remember, Algrady could end up playing guard, and then maybe Coleman plays right guard with Samuel Cosme and his injury likely out for a good chunk of the next season. So Jones could end up playing guard for them. He could end up playing tackle, just depending on how they work at and how Coleman comes along with dealing with speed to the edge. And then we go into Jason Marshall Jr., going to add more cornerback room, help for them. They do definitely need to continue to bolster that. You got Jonathan Jones on another veteran deal. Of course, you got Marlon Humphrey. Both of those guys went on one-year contracts, so making sure that they continue to add more youth with Mikey Sanders still makes a lot of sense. Marshall can be another outside cornerback. On to the Buffalo Bills, though, here. And we start off with a couple of Wildcats and a couple of defensive Wildcats, might I add, Harrison and Walker. So Maxwell Harrison, they need to add some more cornerback help, right? So you pair him on with Christian Benford, day one starter, obviously Terrion Johnson in the slot. That's your cornerback room. I think that Harrison's going to thrive heavily in their zone defense. And Deone Walker, yeah, they've got some guys in there, but they do need to continue to add more talent and add more players. You got Larry Ogunjobi, of course, but once again, like more talent, more help. Daquan Jones getting older now. Ed Oliver, Deone Walker, and Dwayne Carter. Like, that's your grouping of 3 for the future. And then with their next pick, I got Anthony Belton from North Carolina State, who's going to be a good swing man for them early on as a tackle. But I see him as a long-term guard for this football team. Somebody that David Edwards going to last year of his contract. It makes a lot of sense to continue to develop that offensive lineman. You got Cedric Van Pran as a developmental center. Maybe that could be your long-term group. Like, there's a lot of options here, but Belton also gives you that swing tackle ability, which I like, and it could end up being their long-term left guard. He's just such a really powerful offensive lineman. And going on to day 3, we finished up their draft with Sebastian Castro, who probably could even play a little slot corner for them. And that way, look, Terrion Johnson has dealt with some injuries over the past couple of years. I want to make sure we have some depth there, but Castro could play in the slot and also could play up top. I really think he has the skills to do both of those things. He can cover. He showed that at the Senior Bowl in the one-on-ones as well, and through his film. I mean, he really can, and he's a better athlete than you think he is. Finally, we got David Walker from Central Arkansas. He is going to be a good developmental guy. Now, I maybe would have liked to go on edge rusher a little bit earlier than this, but the way the board worked and kind of who I was looking at, I mean, there's a lot of good edge rushers to go after, and David Walker, I think, could be a steal for them in the 4th round. just want to, you got Joey Bosa under here. You got some guys. Of course, you got your starters. AJ Ebeneza going to last year of his contract. And that's why I still think they need to continue to invest in it. Maybe Javon Solomon ends up being a really good pass rusher for them, DPR type of player. But I do think that they need another guy in there for the future. And that's what I'm looking at here with David Walker as a guy that can develop for a season or so and maybe take a role for them as a more of a big-time player going into year number 2. On to the Kansas City Chiefs. We got a ton of hook-on players today. 3 hook-on players. Unbelievable, right? Kelvin Banks Jr., Alfred Collins, Gunnar Helm, also going to help in different ways. I'm still going offensive line for the Chiefs just because I feel like it's going to be such a big thing where Brett Veach is like, hey, we have to figure this thing out once and for all. Even if we have an excess of offense linemen, we'll figure it out later down the line. But you figure Jawan Taylor, this is probably going to be the last year that he's a Kansas City Chief. Unless he has an unbelievable season, then they could keep him for that last year or restructure, whatever. But he could be the right tackle of the future. He could compete for left guard for right now with Kingsley Suamataia. I just feel like they need to improve the offensive line. Plus, Jalen Moore, if it doesn't work out, you need to have a backup plan. They cannot go into next season with, this or that. And Jalen Moore, it's basically a 1-year contract. You can get out of it next season. So if it doesn't work out, then Kelvin Banks can be the left tackle of the future. I just feel like they got to continue to invest in the offensive line, making sure you protect Patrick Mahomes after the season. It's a glaring need. And then Alfred Collins, Texas. This is probably their biggest hole on the roster currently is DT2 next to Chris Jones. And Alfred Collins, if you talk about who looks like Chris Jones from an athletic body type profile, Alfred Collins literally looks like that. He just doesn't have the production and he doesn't have the pass rush know-how right now. Maybe he can develop that, right? But as a number 2 guy next to Chris Jones, I think he'd be a really good pick. They can play up and down that line. Got to feel some help out there on that defensive front. Big void right now. And I expect them to go after some more guys in free agency too. Quinshon Judkins from Ohio State, the Ohio State University. Let's go and add another running back in this room to pair along with Kareem Hunt and Isaiah Pacheco. That running back room was thin at so many points this season. They were not able to run the ball. And Judkins is going to bring some more oomph into that room, right? Ashton Jeanty, talking about more oomph into the room. This is a Spags guy, somebody that can also play in and out on that defensive line. One of the best pass rushers, nuanced pass rushers in this draft class off the edge. He doesn't have the traits, though. That's the unfortunate problem, but he knows how to get after the passer, and I really think he's going to succeed at the next level. Final pick, Gunnar Helm from Texas, another Hook'em Horns player, as I was mentioning. He's going, look, the speed, he had a hamstring on the 40 that he was running. He plays a lot faster than that 4.8 time. So I'm not super worried about that. Let's go get a developmental tight end with Travis Kelce, probably going to last year of his deal. Or he is in last year of his deal, but maybe also the last year that he plays football and ends up retiring possibly after this next season. So Gunnar Helm, Noah Gray, that could be your tight end duo of the future. But we're on to the final team, the Philadelphia Eagles. Fly, Eagles fly. We come on. Here, we got Malachi Starks, BPA. You pair him up there with Reed Blankenship. That's a 1-2 punch that I'm jiving with all day. Maybe Sidney Brown. Maybe they're confident he can take over. I don't know. I mean, Howie Roseman, I'm sure he knows what's going on there. But Malachi Starks, I figure, would be a great addition. It could also play in the slot, too, for them. I mean, you could rock out next season, and maybe Cooper DeJean can play on the outside with Quinion Mitchell, and Malachi Starks plays in the slot, and if they want to do that. So there's a lot of possibilities for them, but Malachi Starks, really good player if he's available for them. Omar Norman Lott. I love his name, and he is going to be another beast of a pass rusher to help fill some of that void from Milton Williams. They're going to get so many comp picks, too, next year. Oh, my gosh, it's insane. But Norman Lott, a lot of upside, so much talent as a pass rusher, as an athlete. It's all there. Just needs to continue to get a little stronger and more reliable in run scenarios. He can rotate in there with Moro Ojimo. And then you got Logan Brown, an athletic developmental right tackle for them. And it allows Lane Johnson, of course, to finish out his career as an Eagle for the next couple of years, hopefully. Maybe 3-4 years, can maybe make it longer, right? I mean, probably 2 to 3 years. That's what we're looking at. But Noah Brown, let him go into Jeff Stoutland University for a couple of years. Let him develop. He's a young player and with a lot of upside. Olafemi Oladejo, UCLA edge rusher to finish off the draft for the Eagles, getting a pass rusher with developmental upside. He screams Vic Fangio, former linebacker. So he has that know-how, that ability. He can drop back into coverage, rush the passer with his traits and athletic burst. Going to be a nice 4th pass rusher. Well, that is going to do it here for this 4-round post-free agency. Or it's free agency still going on, of course. But that is it. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you think. What did I screw up for your football team? Why are you pissed off at me? Hit me up. Anyway, no, I hope you guys had a really good day. I really enjoyed it. Can't wait to do some more team individual mock drafts. It's going to be really coming soon. So I'll talk to you soon.